Imagine Agrabah. Like the flying carpets, the bustling market streets, the magic.
Right, the clever street rat who always manages to outwit the odds,
Yeah, exactly. The guy who always wins the day. But now I want you to imagine that street rat is dead.
Just gone.
Yeah, murdered by the palace guards. And instead of him, a winged multiversal enforcer has just ripped the doors off the throne room to, like, collect the debt.
It is quite the jarring image to start with.
Oh, it really is. Welcome to the deep dive. And if you grew up watching this universe, hearing that the hero was just unceremoniously killed is probably giving you extreme tonal whiplash right now.
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot to process.
It is. But I need you to stick with us because the psychology of what we are unpacking today is just, it's absolutely fascinating.
We are looking at an alternate universe narrative today. It's widely known in the community as the Busters AU.
Right.
And our mission today is to dissect the very first arc of this sprawling, honestly incredibly heavy epic.
We have a massive stack of materials to work through for this one.
Yeah, we've got narrative transcripts, dialogue logs, and these amazing behind-the-scenes world-building notes from the author.
The author who operates under the moniker of the chronicler, right?
Exactly, the chronicler.
So to understand what's happening here, we kind of have to move away from the idea of a fairy tale.
Right, you can't look at it like a standard story.
No, you have to look at this world like an ecosystem. Think about a keystone species in nature like wolves in Yellowstone, you know?
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. If you remove that one species, the entire environment doesn't just change, it collapses.
The rivers alter their course, the herbivores overpopulate.
The forests literally die.
Yeah.
And in the ecosystem of Agrabah, Aladdin was the keystone species.
That is just a perfect framework for this text. The structural integrity of this entire universe relied on Aladdin's specific brand of optimistic subversion.
Yeah, his cleverness.
Right. So when he is removed from the equation, and violently removed at that, the ecosystem experiences a catastrophic failure.
Total free fall. The heroes are traumatized. The villains are suddenly starved of their purpose, you know. The foundational pillars of the world just crumble.
Which means today's deep dive isn't a story about a new hero stepping in to cleanly replace the old one.
Not at all.
It is a profound, incredibly messy character study about grief.
Yeah. It is about multiversal consequences, the sheer gravity of a single localized life, and how a violently forged surrogate family takes on the burden of protecting a broken world.
A group that comes to call themselves the Busters. Yeah. And the chronicler's notes make it explicitly clear we are treating this as the opening chapter of an ever-expanding epic.
They are strapping us in for an incredibly emotional ride.
They really are. And
Yep.
honestly, unpacking the mechanics of how this grief manifests is what makes this text so compelling.
So let's just drop right into the moment where the ecosystem officially shatters.
Let's do it.
We are in the throne room of Agrabah. It's the climax of Jafar's hostile takeover, but the vibe is completely wrong.
It's just ultimate despair.
Yeah. The Sultan is sitting on the throne, glassy-eyed, entirely hypnotized. He's just a puppet.
Princess Jasmine is standing before him, utterly desperate.
And Captain Razul and the loyalist guards are stationed around the room, enforcing the coup. Jafar is gloating. And then the heavy wooden doors of the throne room literally explode inward.
The author uses this entrance to immediately shatter the established visual language of the setting.
Oh, completely.
We have Agrabah, right? An ancient desert kingdom defined by flowing silks, gold, curved architecture, elemental magic.
And stepping through the splintered wood of the doors is a character named Bugsy.
The visual clash is spectacular.
It really is. The text paints this insane picture of Bugsy. He's got stark silver hair. He is wearing a crisp, modern black suit with a pocket watch chain glinting in the ambient light.
Black dress shoes.
Yeah, and the kicker, enormous pitch black wings that unfurl with a heavy physical snap.
He looks like a mob enforcer crossed with an angel of death.
That is exactly it.
It's deliberate anachronism. He doesn't belong in a fairy tale setting, which signals to the reader that the fairy tale rules just no longer apply.
Right, because Bugsy's immediate reaction to the room isn't to give a heroic monologue about the power of friendship.
No, not at all.
He doesn't challenge Jafar to a duel of wits. He unleashes overwhelming, terrifying violence.
He just goes in.
He crosses the room, chokes out Captain Razul, drops him cold at Jafar's feet, and then just physically annihilates Jafar.
Just brutalizes him.
He punches him, shatters his magical snake stack with brute force, and frees the genie in a matter of seconds. But then, and this is wild, He seizes Jafar by his crooked beard, swings him like a rag doll.
Slams him into the marble pillars.
Yes, smashes him through the furniture and chokes him out. Okay, let's unpack this. We have to analyze why Bugsy targets Jafar with such intense personal vengeance.
Well, if we look closely at the dialogue, there's a venomous contempt here that goes way, way beyond standard hero-villain banter.
Oh, it's so personal.
While he's beating him, Bugsy leans in and says, and I quote, "Did you really think you had a shot? The moment I walked in was the moment you fucking lost. Who decided they should call your ass Jaffa Cakes?
Jaffa Cakes.
You're bland, unforgettable, and you taste like straight-up disappointment."
The sheer disrespect of calling this ancient sorcerer Jaffa Cakes while slamming him into a wall.
Right. But the disrespect is masking something much heavier.
Exactly. Bugsy isn't fighting to save the day. He is punishing Jafar for a day that is already permanently lost.
Jafar isn't just a political usurper in Bugsy's eyes. Jafar is the man who successfully ordered the execution of Aladdin.
Which changes everything.
It does. Bugsy's brutality is the physical manifestation of extreme, delayed grief.
He was too late.
Right. He was too late to save the keystone of this world, so he's going to make sure the man who broke it suffers as humiliating a defeat as possible.
This brings up such an interesting contrast in methodologies for me. If we think about how the original Aladdin operated, his whole survival relied on subversion.
He was a street rat. He didn't have magical power.
Exactly, so he used peaceful cleverness, charm, and misdirection. When he defeated Jafar originally, he didn't beat him to a pulp. He tricked Jafar's massive ego.
Manipulated him into wishing to become a genie.
Right, trapping the villain within the bureaucratic rules of his own magical greed.
Aladdin's victories were bloodless. They were structural subversions.
But Bugsy represents the complete catastrophic failure of those peaceful methods. Because in this AU timeline, Aladdin's cleverness wasn't enough. It got him killed.
So Bugsy arrives and applies overwhelming blunt force trauma.
It's a terrifying paradigm shift for the ecosystem of Agrabah. The clever, merciful hero is dead, so the brutal debt collector has arrived.
And what's fascinating here is that the collection extends far beyond just neutralizing Jafar in a physical sense.
Oh yeah, it goes cosmic.
Bugsy's vengeance crosses dimensional boundaries, which introduces us to the multiversal mechanics at play in this narrative.
This is one of the most fascinating mechanical choices in the text. Bugsy decides that merely killing Jafar, or trapping him in a lamp on Earth, just isn't secure enough.
It's too risky.
So he rips open a multiversal rift, literally a tear in the fabric of space-time right there in the throne room, and hurls Jafar's soul directly into the underworld. But crucially, he does not send Jafar to the Disney universe's version of Hades.
Which is a highly calculated strategic decision. Bugsy explicitly states in the dialogue that the localized Disney version of Hades is a clown.
A clown. And structurally, within the lore of that specific universe, he's not entirely wrong.
No, he's totally right. If you look at how the localized Hades operates, he is a deal maker.
He's a middle manager.
Exactly. He is constantly making wagers, signing contracts, and letting people slip through the cracks. Characters are always breaking out of that underworld or bargaining for their lives.
Right, so if Jafar, a master manipulator, went to that Hades, he would inevitably talk his way back to the land of the living.
Precisely. So Bugsy utilizes a mechanic that we can refer to as the Trusted Brother Protocol.
A Trusted Brother Protocol. I love that.
He bypassed the local afterlife and sent Jafar's soul to his multiversal brother. The text specifies this is the Hades from the Kid Icarus Uprising universe.
Wow.
Bugsy yells into the rift, "Mine, I trust him, and he trusts me." And a distant voice answers back, "Another one for you, bro."
Okay, for you listening who might not be familiar with the Kid Icarus universe, why is this specific Hades such a permanent lockbox compared to the dealmaker we just talked about?
Well, the Hades from Kid Icarus Uprising is fundamentally different in personality and cosmological power.
He's not signing contracts.
No. He isn't a stressed bureaucrat making shady deals. He is an absolute ruthless consumer of souls.
He uses souls as literal fuel, doesn't he?
Fuel and currency to build massive armies. He is utterly predatory and possesses zero inclination to bargain with a mortal sorcerer.
So Jafar is just done.
By sending Jafar into that specific ecosystem, Bugsy ensures Jafar will be instantly crushed and utilized as raw material. It is a permanent, absolute erasure.
It's surgical removal from the board of existence, but this wild crossover moment also establishes something crucial about Bugsy's own biology and background.
The chronicler's notes provide essential context here,
Yeah, because Bugsy isn't just a tough guy with wings who happens to know deities in other universes. Bugsy is classified as a Chaos Lord.
which carries immense physiological and cosmological weight.
Exactly. How do Chaos Lords function in this hierarchy? Because the notes explain that they operate on a scale that ordinary humans or even elemental beings like Jafar simply can't comprehend.
Right, they endure immense dimensional pressure to travel between realities.
And this is reflected in their terrifying biology. A Chaos Lord's blood is not human. It is literally black, viscous, and tar-like.
That biological detail is so vital, it physically isolates Bugsy from the people he interacts with.
He's fundamentally alien.
Yes, he carries this immense localized power, but it comes at the cost of being entirely other. And that tar-like biology is going to become highly relevant to his emotional state when we get to the reckoning in the training yard.
But for now, the rift closes. The immediate urgent threat of Jafar is permanently cosmologically erased.
Gone.
And Bugsy is just left standing in this wrecked, silent throne room with the survivors.
Which initiates the second major phase of this arc. The narrative transitions away from immediate vengeance and slows down to examine the complex, incredibly messy process of building a profoundly unconventional surrogate family.
Let's analyze how Bugsy interacts with the surviving elements of the room because it's deeply revealing. He starts with the most unlikely candidate for a family member, Jafar's parrot, Iago.
Iago's inclusion here is a masterstroke of psychological character dynamics.
Bugsy, who actually refers to himself as Prime in this specific timeline moment, he snatches the parrot out of the air.
Now, instinct would say you crush the villain's lackey.
Right. But Bugsy doesn't. He offers Iago a hard choice. He says, listen, little bird, this can go two ways.
1, you fly away right now, leave me alone forever.
2, you stick around as my sidekick. And then Bugsy offers him the one resource Jafar completely hoarded. Actual conversation, actual respect, something that dead, self-obsessed bastard never gave you.
It forces us to examine the nature of systemic abuse and loyalty.
Because Iago was just a victim too, in a way.
Exactly. Bugsy accurately assesses that Iago wasn't fundamentally malicious. He was a victim of Jafar's narcissistic abuse. Jafar demanded subservience, but offered zero validation.
So by offering respect, treating Iago as a conscious entity with agency rather than an accessory, Bugsy instantly secures a fierce, genuine alliance.
He dismantles the abuse by simply offering dignity.
Which is the exact same philosophy he applies to Princess Jasmine, albeit with much higher political stakes.
Yes, his dressing down of the Sultan is a brutal deconstruction of the city's political failure.
It's scathing. Bugsy turns to the Sultan, dismissively calls him Raj, and just verbally eviscerates him.
He points out the systemic failure of the Sultan's rule.
Yeah, he calls him a shitty sultan for sitting there hypnotized while Jafar dropped people left and right. But he zeroes in on the Sultan's insistence on controlling Jasmine's autonomy through forced marriage.
Right, Bugsy says, let her choose. Let her choose, Raj. It's not fair to her, and you know it.
And he even uses the Sultan's own history as a weapon. He reminds him that his wife Jasmine's mother chose him out of everybody, despite him being born into unearned power.
Bugsy is forcibly dismantling the structural flaws of Agrabah that allowed a manipulator like Jafar to thrive in the first place.
Complacency and a rigid tradition made the city vulnerable.
Exactly. Bugsy is injecting a radical dose of modern autonomy into an ancient monarchy.
And he turns to Jasmine, validating her right to choose her own fate, but he also makes a heavy, eternal promise.
The promise is so important.
He tells her, if you ever need any help, any at all, just give me a ring. I'll be there any way I can. Jasmine, who is understandably terrified of this winged enforcer, asks why he is offering this.
His answer is our first real glimpse into Bugsy's own psychological baggage.
He says, because you have the name of somebody I used to care about a great deal.
It reveals that Bugsy is carrying the ghosts of other lifetimes, other dimensions. He's projecting his multiversal trauma onto this localized universe.
So we end up with this core group, Bugsy, the newly freed Genie, and Iago, who actively chooses to stay. They dub themselves the Busters.
And they become this permanent, heavily armed, threat-busting team for Agrabah.
The chronicler notes that the episodic threats of the original universe, the various monsters and warlords, they still happen in this AU timeline.
Just without Aladdin there to handle them.
Right. When danger rises, the call goes out, Busters.
I want you to consider the psychology of this group dynamic. There's a beautifully written journal entry from Princess Jasmine in the text that encapsulates what is actually happening here.
She observes them from a distance, right?
Yes. She writes that Genie laughs more freely now, Iago shows this unexpected fierce loyalty, and Bugsy spends these quiet, brooding nights standing watch on the palace balcony.
But the devastating thesis of her journal entry is that the empty space Aladdin left was never actually filled. It was only managed.
Precisely. They aren't a traditional superhero team. They are a trauma support group, armed to the teeth.
But let me push back on Bugsy's motives here for a second. Let's really interrogate this. Is his creation of the Busters purely a tactical necessity?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, the Sultan is proven to be weak, the royal guards are compromised, and external enemies are inevitably going to attack Agrabah. Does he just need a localized paramilitary squad? Or is this the desperate action of a cosmically lonely Chaos Lord trying to build an echo chamber with the only other entities in existence who share his specific, agonizing grief?
It's an intersection of both, really, but the psychological evidence points heavily toward the latter.
You think so?
Definitely. If we look at the mechanics of trauma bonding, forming this team allows Bugsy to externalize his internal pain. Protecting Agrabah becomes a physical proxy for protecting Aladdin.
Ah, I see. He failed to save the Keystone, so he will absolutely refuse to let the ecosystem die.
Exactly. But if he tried to do that alone, in isolation, he would be forced to sit in silence with his own cosmic guilt.
That makes total sense. By tethering himself to Genie and Iago, he creates a closed loop where Aladdin's memory is constantly validated and preserved.
They are managing the physical space of the city together because facing the emotional void alone would mentally crush them.
But while they have established this perimeter of protection around Agrabah, they cannot truly move forward until they deal with the rotting infection inside the city.
The reckoning with the royal guard.
Exactly. They've surgically removed the mastermind, Jafar, but Jafar didn't physically strike Aladdin down.
No, he didn't.
The actual hands that carried out the order, the men who swung the swords, were Captain Razul and the Loyalist Guards. And this brings us to one of the most intense, emotionally raw, and mechanically fascinating scenes in the entire narrative, the confrontation in the training yard.
Bugsy's approach here is a masterclass in dissecting the anatomy of complicity.
Bugsy corners Razul in the yard, surrounded by the other guards, and he strips away the universal defense of the foot soldier immediately.
He calls Razul a callous, heartless motherfucker.
Razul tries to hide behind the chain of command, implying he was just following the vizier's orders, but Bugsy destroys that defense. He says, "I don't care if it was Jafar's orders. You knew that bastard was shifty. You still did it anyway. You helped him kill Aladdin."
Bugsy understands that systemic evil cannot function without opportunistic enforcers.
Right, the guy's on the ground.
A corrupt leader is powerless without soldiers willing to prioritize their own safety or their own prejudices over morality.
And Bugsy proves this by inviting Razul to punch him. Razul, driven by martial pride, takes the swing.
And what follows isn't a heroic duel.
Not at all. It is a humiliating deconstruction of Razul's authority. Bugsy beats him senseless. He fights dirty, kicking him in the groin from behind, choking him, dropping him in the dirt.
He reduces the feared captain of the guard to trash in front of his men.
But the physical beating is just the prologue to the emotional devastation of this scene.
Because this is where the emotional dam for both Genie and Bugsy finally breaks.
Genie steps up to the battered Razul. The text describes this as the saddest outburst of Genie's entire immortal life.
It's heartbreaking.
He looks at Razul and says, "You know what the worst part is? I was free for 5 minutes. 5. And the first thing I wanted to do was go find the kid and tell him we actually did it."
But he wasn't there. Because of you. You helped kill the best friend I ever had.
Stop and think about the cruel, devastating paradox of Genie's existence in this timeline.
He possesses phenomenal cosmic power, and he is finally untethered from the lamp.
And the very first, purest impulse of that absolute freedom is to share the joy with the person who granted it.
But that joy is instantly suffocated by the reality of murder. Genie's freedom is inextricably, permanently linked to Aladdin's death.
Every moment he spends free is a reminder of the boy who died to give it to him.
Hearing Genie articulate that heartbreak, seeing the stark reality of what Razul's complicity actually cost, it breaks Bugsy.
It does. This terrifying, violently protective alien Chaos Lord drops to one knee in the dirt. And the chronicler gives us this haunting, incredible visual mechanism. Black tears streaming down Bugsy's face.
This is where that biological detail we discussed earlier pays off so beautifully.
Explain the mechanics of this because it's such a striking image. Why black tears?
Well, it is the biological reality of his tar-like Chaos Lord blood mixing with the purely human physiological response of crying.
Wow.
It symbolizes a grief that is entirely alien and cosmic in its origin, yet fundamentally, devastatingly human in its expression.
His physical form, this impenetrable, sharp-suited enforcer, is literally cracking under the weight of his human empathy.
He is leaking the cosmic reality of his pain.
Bugsy cries out right there in the yard. Aladdin was family. That is the core of it. And then he turns his tear-stained face to Razul and delivers the final psychological blow.
He says, "That's why I went so hard on Jafar. I don't normally do that. But you always hated him. You're an opportunist, an elitist piece of shit."
Bugsy calls out the classism that actually drove the murder.
Yes. He forces Razul to face the ugly truth. Razul didn't kill Aladdin just out of bureaucratic duty. He did it because it was easy.
He did it because he always harbored a deep-seated hatred for the impoverished, lower-class kid who dared to exist in his pristine city.
Razul used Jafar's orders as a convenient excuse to execute his own prejudice.
Bugsy looks at the entire guard and says, "Every one of you still standing here helped take my family from me."
This confrontation serves as the crucible that hardens the Buster's philosophy. Bugsy threatens the remaining guards, stating that if they ever attempt an uprising against the new status quo, he will cut their throats himself.
He banishes the loyalist guards to the outer fringes of the city, explicitly stating they are to stay in the parts of Agrabah where the Busters don't walk.
Which effectively forces the Sultan to officially dissolve the traditional royal guard.
And I have to ask, is this entirely ethical? Bugsy has essentially instituted a localized military dictatorship. He dissolved the state's security and replaced it with his own traumatized paramilitary unit.
It is a morally gray evolution, absolutely. But within the context of this broken ecosystem, you could argue it is the difference between malicious subjugation and trauma-induced hypervigilance.
Jafar wanted to rule for ego. Bugsy wants to control the perimeter so no one else he loves can be murdered.
Right. They transitioned from avengers seeking retribution to uncompromising custodians. They enforced a harsh, rigid peace born entirely out of their shared trauma.
It is incredibly heavy. The weight of this new reality is suffocating. But what's fascinating is that the ripple effects of the keystone species being removed don't just affect his friends or the political structure of the city.
No, they extend outward.
The absence of Aladdin completely breaks the villains of the ecosystem, too.
Because a villain requires a foil to define their narrative purpose.
Exactly, and the text provides a brilliant scene to illustrate this mechanical failure. The Busters are out on patrol, and they are dealing with an environmental threat known as the abysmal mechanicals.
We should provide some context on what these are, as they represent a very specific type of threat.
Right. The abysmal mechanicals are essentially relentless, soulless, clockwork automatons. They operate on pure, programmed logic.
They are a fantastic thematic contrast to the Busters, because the mechanicals have zero emotion, zero grief, just mechanical forward momentum.
But during this fight, the Busters pause because they stumble upon a quiet, deeply unsettling sight near the city cemetery. They find Mozenrath.
Mozenrath is arguably the most formidable antagonist in the expanded lore of this universe.
Oh, without a doubt.
He is a brilliant, ambitious, arrogant necromancer whose entire identity is usually wrapped up in conquering Agrabah and proving his superiority over Aladdin.
But here, Mozenrath isn't plotting, he is just standing silently at Aladdin's grave. And in his hand, he is holding black sand.
Now, if you know the magic system of this universe, black sand is the primary component for high-level revival magic.
He is actively contemplating casting a spell to bring Aladdin back from the dead. Bugsy approaches him, genuinely confused, and asks, "What actually are you to Aladdin? He told me about you more than once, but he never really said who you were to him."
Mozenrath's magical, sentient gauntlet asks if it should reveal the truth to this stranger. But Mozenrath just looks at Bugsy.
He recognizes him cosmologically as a Chaos Lord.
He recognizes the sheer scale of the power standing in front of him, and Mozenrath just deflates. He delivers a line so utterly devoid of his usual arrogance.
Does it even really matter anymore? Does any of it matter? Rest assured, I will not be taking over Agrabah. I will not be destroying anything. Not anymore. There's no point.
And he just opens his hand. He lets the black sand of revival fall through his fingers into the dirt, and he turns and walks away. There's no point.
It is the ultimate proof of the Keystone Theory. Without Aladdin's light to push against, Mozenrath's darkness loses its shape.
His ambition was a reactionary force. When the hero is removed from the equation, not bested in an epic magical duel, but killed by senseless bureaucratic violence, it completely robs the arch-villain of his narrative agency.
But the chronicler's notes drop a piece of secret lore here that recontextualizes this entire scene into something horrific. a secret the Busters don't even know yet.
This part is just wild.
Mozenrath wasn't just a rival. Mozenrath is biologically Aladdin's brother.
It is a staggering, devastating revelation that changes the mechanics of his grief.
How did this work, magically speaking? Because the notes explain that Mozenrath's memory of this biological connection was repressed by a localized spell.
But that spell was fundamentally tethered to Aladdin's life force. When Aladdin's heart stopped, the magical tether snapped and the memory block dissolved.
Think about the neurological and psychological horror of that mechanic.
It's unbearable to even imagine.
I want you, listening right now, to really put yourself in Mozenrath's shoes for a second. You spend your entire adolescent and adult life fighting this infuriating street rat. You obsess over him. You try to conquer his city. You try to destroy him.
And then, one random Tuesday, the street rat is killed by palace guards.
Instantly, a magical veil lifts in your mind, and your brain is violently flooded with decades of repressed childhood memories. You realize with absolute clarity that you have spent your life trying to murder your own brother.
The timing is exceptionally cruel. You regain your family only the exact, precise microsecond that you lose them forever.
It's unbearable. His entire identity as a conqueror was built on a magically induced lie that nearly ended in fratricide.
No wonder he dropped the sand. No wonder he gave up his empire.
His grief is so complex and toxic that even revival magic couldn't fix the psychological damage of what he had already done.
It adds a profound layer of systemic melancholy to the universe. It cements the idea that this ecosystem isn't just damaged, it is fundamentally irreparably broken.
Everyone, hero, bystander, and villain, is suffering from the localized gravity of this singular loss.
The atmosphere is so heavy that after the mechanicals are dealt with, Genie actually suggests the unthinkable. They need a vacation.
The Busters need to physically step away from the relentless, suffocating grief radiating off the stones of Agrabah, just for a minute.
Bugsy, seeing the exhaustion in his team, agrees.
But the multiverse, inherently chaotic as it is, intervenes.
Yes, it throws them a massive, dimension-hopping curveball. Just as they agree to take a breath, the fabric of reality tears.
And the three of them, Bugsy, Genie, and Iago, are violently ripped from their timeline and dropped into an alternate universe.
And this is not a random, benign universe. The narrative deliberately drops them into a highly specific nightmare scenario.
They land in a timeline where Jafar won. We are looking at a world where Jafar successfully executed his wish to become an all-powerful genie, and he used that cosmic power to rule over a completely subjugated, ruined version of Agrabah.
Now, structurally, we need to observe the Busters' reaction here because it is incredibly telling.
Contrast it with the first scene, right?
Exactly. Think back to the first section. In their home universe, when Bugsy confronted mortal Jafar, he took his time. He monologued, he dispensed physical punishment, he relished in the slow dismantling of Jafar's ego.
But here, confronting an infinitely more powerful Genie Jafar in a ruined timeline, there is zero hesitation.
The trauma response from the Busters is instantaneous, synchronized, and absolute.
Bugsy sees this red Genie Jafar and just screams, "Motherfucker, die!" They don't talk. They launch themselves at him and literally tear him apart.
And to ensure the job is done, Bugsy utilizes a specific, terrifying ability tied to his Chaos Lord status. He roars the word Hakai.
Hakai, a term often associated in Eastern pop culture and anime with ultimate divine destruction. But let's explain the specific mechanics of what this word does in this universe's lore.
It is not a standard destruction spell. The notes state that Hakai doesn't just kill this specific Genie Jafar, it unravels his localized existence entirely, erasing his data from this specific timeline,
while simultaneously sending a shockwave that weakens every other iteration of Jafar across the entire multiverse.
It is the ultimate expression of Bugsy's cosmic catharsis. He couldn't save Aladdin in his own timeline, so he utilizes his terrifying cosmological weight to ensure that the architect of his pain suffers on a multiversal scale.
He is weaponizing eradication as a coping mechanism for his localized grief.
But wielding that kind of reality-breaking power takes a massive biological toll. The sheer output drains Bugsy completely. Both he and Genie collapse into the dust of this ruined timeline.
They are physically spent and emotionally hollowed out, but as they hit the ground, something incredible happens. They start laughing. Weakly, through tears, they are just laughing.
Because as they look up through the ruins, they see him.
They see the keystone, they see Aladdin, alive.
In this specific timeline, Jafar might have devastated the city, but Aladdin managed to survive the coup.
Bugsy and Genie are weeping, saying to each other, "He's alive! He's alive! At least in this universe, he's alive." The emotional overload of seeing their dead friend's chest rising and falling with breath is so intense that they actually pass out, crying in their sleep.
It is a moment of profound vulnerability. And mechanically, it shifts the narrative burden to Iago.
Yeah, Iago has to step up.
While the two heavy hitters are unconscious, it falls to the former villain's sidekick to explain to the stunned survivors of this ruined timeline who these immensely powerful strangers are.
And why seeing a street rat caused them to break down sobbing, Iago becomes the custodian of their shared trauma.
Which, as an aside, is incredible character growth for a bird who used to just scream about Cracker.
I know, right? But a few hours later, Bugsy and Genie wake up. They've destroyed the localized Jafar. They've seen a living, breathing Aladdin. And here, we arrive at what I truly believe is the deepest, most complex thematic point of this entire deep dive.
The impossible choice.
The choice. Genie turns to Bugsy and says, "Still, we gotta see a version of Aladdin. Alive. If that isn't worth the frequent flyer miles across dimension, I don't know what is."
Genie is profoundly, quietly grateful just for the visual confirmation that somewhere in the vastness of the multiverse, his friend's light wasn't extinguished.
And Bugsy agrees. He laughs, confirming it was absolutely worth the dimensional toll. But then Bugsy makes a decision that defines the entire ethos of the Busters. He insists they have to leave.
This blew my mind when reading the transcripts.
Bugsy looks at this world and says, "This world got completely wrecked by Jafar, the whole place. Thank God we killed our Jafar when we had the chance, but we can't stay Genie. They already have a Genie here. Let's free him. He'll handle the rest. We need to go back to our Agrabah, our Agabrabah."
This raises the most critical, psychological, and philosophical question of the narrative. You have the ability to traverse dimensions. You have just discovered a universe where the boy you are endlessly grieving is currently alive and breathing.
Why on earth would you choose to open a rift and walk back into the graveyard?
Because the Busters are entirely defined by the specificity of their trauma.
Exactly. To stay in this alternate timeline would be an act of cosmic denial. It would be a comforting illusion.
Yes, that Aladdin is alive, but he is not their Aladdin. Their Aladdin is in the ground, back in their home dimension.
Their specific duty, their localized reality, and the specific clockwork threats of the abysmal mechanicals are waiting back home.
If they abandon their broken Agrabah for a slightly happier one, they invalidate the immense weight of their own grief. They would be abandoning the memory of the boy who actually died.
It is a breathtaking display of accountability. They refuse to take the easy way out. They use their power to free this alternate world's Genie, trusting him to rebuild the ruined city, and then they prepare to open the rift back to their own broken, grieving world.
But the author doesn't just let them leave. The chronicler forces us to view this departure from the alternate perspective, which provides the emotional climax of the arc.
It is the most haunting image in the entire text. The Busters open the rift and vanish back to their reality, and in the dust of this ruined timeline, the alternate living Aladdin and Jasmine are left just staring at the empty space where these godlike strangers disappeared.
Put yourself in that alternate Aladdin's head.
He is trying to process what just happened. He notes that the bird looked exactly like Jafar's old pet. Jasmine points out that this winged man in a suit and this incredibly fierce blue giant just tore a Genie Jafar apart like it was absolutely nothing.
But it's Aladdin's final observation that absolutely wrecks the reader.
He quietly notes to Jasmine that these three impossibly powerful strangers looked at him like they already knew him.
Like they had already lost him.
Like they had lost him once. That line is how the arc concludes. The Busters return home, still carrying the heavy, unfixable weight of a dead friend, still violently protecting their Agrabah, still stubbornly moving forward in the dark.
It is a beautifully tragic, perfectly executed moment that caps off this first major arc.
And as we noted at the beginning, it is only the first arc. The chronicler has designed this universe to be a massive, ever-expanding epic.
The chronicler's meta notes at the end of our sources explain the structural reasoning behind this. They write that this first arc had to be incredibly dark.
It was narratively mandatory to establish the bleak reality of a city without its keystone.
You have to establish the absolute baseline of grief before you can earn the right to move forward and find hope again. You cannot heal a fracture until you acknowledge how badly the bone is broken.
But the chronicler promises that the tonal balance will shift. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and the universe will expand in wild directions.
Yeah, the teases for the future arcs are fantastic. For instance, they mentioned that the King of Thieves storyline is going to play out completely differently in this universe.
They pose this brilliant tactical question: will the highly proactive, combat-hardened Busters just preemptively ambush and beat up the 40 thieves.
Will they take down the villain with the golden claws before he even gets a chance to approach the hand of Midas?
Because they aren't waiting to be tricked anymore. They are actively hunting threats.
It changes the entire genre of those classic stories, from adventure to tactical espionage. The chronicler also leaves Jasmine's romantic and political future completely wide open, asking how she will govern and who she will align with now that her predetermined path with Aladdin is gone.
And there is even a bizarre, amazing tease about a potential House of Mouse spin-off.
Which would be a fascinating tonal experiment.
Think about the whiplash. What happens if you take the ultra-violent, deeply traumatized, swear-heavy busters and suddenly drop them into the squeaky clean, corporate-safe environment of the House of Mouse lobby alongside regular, untraumatized Disney characters?
The psychological friction of that crossover would be hilarious and deeply unsettling.
The chronicler also makes one absolute boundary very clear in the notes. There will be no zombie-related resurrection plots in this AU.
They are adamant about that. No saturated undead tropes.
They are building a proper, character-driven, emotional epic about living with consequence, and they want the audience prepared for a genuine emotional ride, not a horror gimmick.
It's a ride that ultimately forces the reader, and you listening, to ask profound questions about the interconnected nature of our own lives.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's deep dive.
I want you to think about that alternate Aladdin, the one who stood in the dust of his ruined city and watched the busters disappear through the rift. He now possesses a terrifying piece of knowledge.
He knows that somewhere out there in the vast, infinite multiverse, his specific existence was so crucially important, so foundational, that his death birthed a team of cosmic, reality-bending protectors.
It raises a haunting question for all of us. How does knowing your own multiversal worth or understanding the devastating, catastrophic cost that your absence would inflict on your ecosystem change the way you choose to live your life tomorrow?
What an incredible, heavy thought to end on. If you knew that your sudden absence would physically and emotionally shatter the world of the people around you, how fiercely would you fight to stay in it? We started this deep dive talking about broken ecosystems and shattered keystones. But what Bugsy, Genie, and Iago have shown us is that even when the foundational bones of a universe are irreparably broken, you can still build something fiercely, stubbornly protective around the fracture.
You don't have to fix the unfixable.
No. Sometimes you just have to manage the empty space together. Thank you for exploring this incredible emotional stack of materials with us. Until next time.